Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing a video actually inspired by one of you. So this morning I was looking through my eyeshadow palette declutter comment section, and one of you guys actually suggested that I do a video where I talk about what eyeshadow palettes I would rebuy if I lost every single one of them. And I thought that was a plus idea. I mean, so much so that we're doing it today. So I really wanted this video to be super realistic. I didn't want to go into this with the mindset of a beauty vlogger because I feel like it's not super relatable for you guys. Like, I didn't want to come on here and show you guys like 20 different palettes and be like, I gotta keep this because just in case. Even though I'm not gonna be using half of these eyeshadow palettes in my everyday life, I really wanted to actually show you guys what palettes I would rebuy if I was only using them for my day-to-day. So I challenged myself and I told myself that I could only choose 5 palettes because I feel like 5 palettes is kind of a sweet spot number. It's not overkill. It's not like too many palettes, but it's also just like the perfect amount to really give you enough variety to get a ton of different eye looks. So obviously the palettes that I'm choosing today are some of my favorite palettes, but I did choose them pretty strategically. I didn't just choose my 5 favorite palettes. I really wanted to make sure that the 5 palettes that I chose really covered all of my bases. But not only that, I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't choosing just like 5 neutral palettes that looked exactly the same from one another. I wanted to, actually have a nice variety of shades that weren't too repetitive. I am also pretending that I lost my whole entire eyeshadow collection. So not just my eyeshadow palettes, but also like my eyeshadow toppers and my eyeshadow singles. So I did also choose 5 eyeshadow singles / toppers that I need to have in my life and that I would totally repurchase if I lost everything. I would really love if you guys could also let me know what your top 5 eyeshadow palettes would be if you lost your whole entire collection. What would be the first 5 that you would repurchase? So without further ado, let's get into it. So let's first start off with the neutral palettes. Obviously, these are probably the most important palettes to have in a collection. I feel like if you're going to invest your money in any type of palette, let it be a really, really good neutral one. Even though they're kind of boring, matte creams, matte blacks, and different shades of matte browns are really important to have in your collection because they're kind of just gonna be the foundation for most of your eye looks. So starting off first with probably my number 1 favorite neutral palette. When I was putting together this video, I didn't have to think twice. This was the first palette that I grabbed to include because the Anastasia Soft Glam really does have pretty much everything that you need in order to create anything from like a pretty basic eye look to even something a little bit more glam, as the name suggests. Now, if you wanted just one palette that had all the basic shades that you needed and more, the Soft Glam really is going to be your guy. This has everything that you needed here. You have your matte cream, you have a really beautiful deep dark matte black, you have a variety of browns in here. You have anything from a really, really warm mulberry shade to something really deep and cool toned. And then you have some of your more mid-tone browns that lean more warm like sienna, more neutral like rustic, and also some great transition shades like orange soda and burnt orange. And then on top of all of that, you also have some really great metallic shades in here. You have like a nice more cool toned taupey shade, a nice bronze, a pink. You also have like a nice champagne. So even the metallic shades are still very wearable. They're still going to give you a lot of versatility. What I also really like about the Soft Glam is that even though it is a pretty basic palette, but I feel like it's not boring. I think there are a lot of really fun looks that you could actually create with this because of the metallics that they did include in here. You can create something a little bit more glam and creative as well as your more basic everyday looks. Now, Anastasia eyeshadows as a whole, I feel like 90% of the time they're really great. I know that they do have some palettes that are kind of like a little bit of a miss, like the Subculture, a lot of people had trouble with. I know that the Alyssa Edwards palette, some people had trouble with. The Soft Glam though, like the eyeshadows in here are perfect. Their pigmentation, the blendability, everything about them is exactly how you'd want your eyeshadows to be. The metallics are intense, the mattes are easy to use. I would say the only downside to this palette for me is the packaging. I don't love it. It is kind of like a velvety finish. It gets filthy and it looks really, really gross after a little while, but it's definitely not a deal breaker for me whatsoever. This would 100% be the first palette that I would throw into my basket when I was shopping for my new palettes if everything were to disappear. So I definitely knew that I wanted to include an Natasha Denona palette, and I know what you're thinking, but Jamie, why? They are so expensive. They're kind of overpriced, and I would have to agree, but there's no denying that Natasha Denona knows how to put together a gorgeous, gorgeous palette. And I am never disappointed when it comes to her palettes. And they're probably also some of my most used. So I know personally for me, I get kind of my most use out of my Natasha Denona palettes just because I feel like the color combinations in her palettes are always really inspiring to me. I find them to be a little bit more unique. They're not super basic. So when I look at the palette, I think of all these different and fun looks that I can create with them. And that's really not the case with all palettes. Sometimes I'll look at like, you know, just like a normal neutral palette or even something more colorful and have no idea what to do with them. So originally I was actually going to include the Natasha Denona Biba palette because this is definitely my most used Natasha Denona palette. But then I thought to myself, wait a second, that makes absolutely no sense for me to include this because even though it's not exactly the same, it's a little bit too similar to the Anastasia Soft Glam palette. And it's not to say that they're exactly the same, they're not dupes or anything like that, but the shades of neutrals that are in here are not that far out from the shades of neutrals that are in here. I would still pick the Soft Glam over it and instead get the Safari palette. So the reason why I chose the Safari palette is because it's probably one of the most unique palettes that I have in my collection. There's really nothing else that I have, at least, that is anything like this. This is an all matte palette that has a variety of a bunch of different shades. There's neutrals in here, but there's also some really fun pops of color. You've got some fun greens, blues, this really gorgeous orange. You have some really nice purples in here. And I kind of felt like these shades really complemented the other palettes that I chose for this curated collection. And having these more like colorful mattes in my collection would just allow me to create so many different looks. Like with this, I feel like I'm fully covered as far as colorful eyeshadows. And the reason why I chose the Safari palette over, say, like the Riviera palette from Anastasia or any other more colorful eyeshadow palette is because the colors that are in here, even though they're colorful, they're still quite wearable. They're a little bit more on the muted side. They're not super intense, which is definitely something that I like because if I'm gonna be creating a more colorful look, I'm gonna be creating it in a more wearable way, and these shades really do allow me to do that. So I knew that if I wanted to really complete a full well-rounded collection, I needed to have a little bit of color in there, and I feel like having a full thing of matte would really allow me the versatility that I wanted. So next up, I have my Urban Decay Born to Run palette, which is by far one of my all-time favorite eyeshadow palettes. I actually did a video probably about a year or so ago where I took this whole entire palette and I did my full face of makeup using this. So not just my eyeshadow, but I did my foundation, my blush, my bronzer, my brows, my lips, everything using this palette. In my opinion, the Born to Run is by far the best eyeshadow palette that Urban Decay has ever come out with. I like it so much more than any of the other Naked palettes. So what I really like about this palette is that you really do have a little mix of everything. You have neutrals in here, but the neutrals that are in here aren't your basic neutrals like you would find in the Anastasia Soft Glam. So you have like a really nice deep cool tone brown, which is always great to have. A really nice deep warm tone brown. That's as far as like the browns go in this palette, other than Riff, which is a nice little like warmer crease transition shade. Other than that, you have like a coral and these really beautiful raspberry shades and this bright orange that you could really incorporate into any more neutral eye look and make it really wearable, or you could make it really intense and fun and combine it with the other more colorful shades that are in here. And then on top of those more like wearable matte shades, you also have some amazing metallics. You have like greens and blues and purples and bronzes and champagnes, and there really is a little bit of everything. And I specifically thought that this eyeshadow palette would actually complement the Natasha Denona Safari palette perfectly, because the thing is that in this palette, even though there are like greens and blues, there are no like matte greens and blues in order to like really build a more greenish or bluish eyeshadow look, but you have that in the Natasha Denona Safari palette. There really are no other more like purple matte options in this palette, but there are in the Safari palette. So that's why I felt like they really just combined together perfectly, and these two together you could create like an endless amount of looks with. And obviously you could also combine these two together. So really, the possibilities are endless. So I feel like so far we kind of have all of the neutrals covered. So I really didn't want to put in another palette that had even more neutrals in it because I just didn't feel like it was necessary. So for me personally, if I'm going to be wearing color, I'm definitely going to be going towards either purples or more of like those ready pinks. So I included 2 palettes from the Huda Beauty Obsessions collection. I love these palettes so much. I just feel like they are really well done. They're really small. They're about the size of like the palm of my hand. You've got 9 eyeshadow shades, a variety of mattes and metallics and satins, really a little bit of everything. So this one over here is the Amethyst Obsessions, and this has such a pretty variety of purples and pinks. And again, you can combine this with a more neutral color story to make it more wearable. You can use just this palette on its own to create like just a very purple eyeshadow look. Same thing goes with the Ruby Obsessions. This is more of like a reddish warm eyeshadow palette. This is actually what I'm wearing on my lid today. I did my whole entire look using just this palette. And I also feel like the other eyeshadow palettes that I chose don't really have anything like these shades in them. So it's just a really great addition to the collection. That's it for the eyeshadow palettes, but that's not it for the eyeshadow collection, because like I said, if I'm gonna be repurchasing my whole entire eyeshadow collection, I need to also have some eyeshadow toppers, because eyeshadow toppers for me are kind of like the cherry on top of the sundae when it comes to my eyeshadow looks. I could have a really pretty eyeshadow look going on, but as soon as I apply like a shimmery, gorgeous topper to that eyeshadow look, it brings it to the next level. It makes it so much more gorgeous. I am wearing one right in the center of my lid today, and I kind of feel like even though this look is like, you know, not so basic, I still feel like that little bit of extra shine right in the center of my lid brought this look to life and just made it just a little bit more special. Because again, eyeshadow toppers I feel like are pretty versatile. You could apply them in a really sheer layer to add just like a little bit of sparkle to an already existing eyeshadow look. You could also apply them a little bit heavier handed and more opaque on their own if you want just like a really shimmery, beautiful lid. So I had to include 3 of the Hourglass Scattered Light eyeshadow toppers because they're honestly just some of my favorites. These though are kind of like the mature version of an eyeshadow topper. They just give you that gorgeous shimmer and sparkle without being obnoxious. I have 3 favorite shades. Probably my favorite is Reflect, and that's like the champagne shade. It's just so wearable and easy to pop on literally anything. I feel like if you're gonna get any of the shades from the collection, pick up Reflect. I also love Aura. It's a little bit more on like the pinker side, and then Smoke is a gorgeous, more like cool tone taupe. Very similar to the Hourglass Scattered Light. This is the Marc Jacobs Sequins. It's pretty much the exact same idea. This one I really wanted to include though because I feel like it is a fairly like unique shade. It's not like your typical bronze or gold or champagne. This one is called Topaz Flash, and it's pretty much like a bronzy brown. There's just so many different colors of shimmer in here. There's like gold and pink and even almost like a purpley shade in there as well. So this all over the lid just gives the most amazing like multi-dimensional effect. Last but not least, I wanted to also include one of my little Kaja stacks. This one over here is in the shade Rosewater. The reason why I wanted to include this one is because, like I said, I really love wearing pinks and purples on my eyes, and I wanted to include another eyeshadow topper that I could pair with those types of eye looks because the ones that I just showed you guys are all fairly neutral. So this guy comes with 3 different shades. They're all in the pink family. Only thing with this guy is that you do want to make sure that you're using an eyeshadow primer with this because there is some significant glitter fallout with this product, but it can be avoided as long as you use kind of like a sticky primer underneath. And honestly, with all of these, I always get compliments on my eyeshadow with them. So guys, that is it for today's video. Those are all of the eyeshadow products that I would purchase if I lost everything. These would be the first ones that I would put on the tab. Please let me know what you would do if you lost every single eyeshadow product in your collection. What would be the first 5 eyeshadow palettes that you would purchase? Of course, give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.